My oldest daughter, Addison, was born with a major heart defect. She has a ventricular septal defect. In non-medical terms, what that means is that she was born with a very large hole in her heart. The hole was so large that for the first 3 months of her life, she was in heart failure. If you saw her as a baby girl for the first 3 months of her life, her skin was translucent. She was constantly out of breath because of her heart trying to work overtime and having to work overtime to get the amount of blood needed to keep her alive. In essence, for the first 3 months of Addison's life, she was in heart failure until she had open heart surgery. I have a picture of her coming out of that surgery. Now you can imagine what this did to the hearts of her parents, knowing that a surgeon, along with a team of nurses, were going to have to open up her chest, stop her heart, and put a Teflon patch over the whole of her heart. And I'll never forget when Sarah and I, when we sat down with the surgeon pre-surgery, and he just began to tell us and teach us about the anatomy of the heart, the makeup of the heart, and how the heart is central. It's everything to our body. You see, there's a lot of systems in your body that you can do without, you can live without. But the heart is central. And so much so that if the heart fails, life is over. I want to ask you a question with that context in mind. Have you ever considered what shapes you? Have you ever considered why you are who you are? Have you ever thought about how did you get where you are? Why do you have the personality that you have? Why do you carry yourself in the way that you carry yourself? Why do you respond to situations and circumstances uniquely in a way that no one else responds to situations and circumstances? Like, what makes up the unique you? One of the ways that we maybe would all put this question is, how did I get here? How did I get here to this stage in my life, to the circumstances that I'm living in right now, to the choices, of course, that I've made? Like, how did I get here? In this teaching series, Shapes, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at the formative influences of our lives, the formative influences, the most formative influence that actually shape us, that help us get us where we are, that help make us and shape us to be who we are. And so what we're going to do, just by way of remembering what we've gone through, is we're going to attach a shape to one of those formative forces. I have a hard time remembering things. I think that junior high, high school, and college for me, I don't know if it was true for you, and even my graduate work, a lot of it was short-term memory. You know what I'm saying? It was just enough to pass the test, you know? So I have to attach symbols, and I want things that I learn, I want them to not just be surface level. I actually want them to shape me and to form me. And so today, I want to give you a guess of what the shape is. It's a heart. Oh. Today, we're going to look at the heart. And I want you to consider this. I want you to write this down. May not on the surface seem too, revelatory or earth-shattering to you, but if you really understood the weight of it, you would know that it is earth-shattering. My heart shapes my life. I want you to consider that. Maybe write that down. My heart shapes my life. You know, some people have this thought that whatever happens in life must just be the will of God. That we just live with this idea that if it's happened, God allowed it to happen, so it just must be His will. But I would argue that point from a biblical perspective, because I can tell you right now that there are things in my life that I have done that were outside of the will of God. And there are things that you have done, choices that you have made, decisions that you have followed through on that were outside of the will of God. We live in a world that is a picture of, in a lot of ways, being outside of the will of God. And those decisions that we've made, God has given us a freedom of choice. It's called free will. And because of the free will that he's given us, it has the ability, the decisions that we make, the choices that we take, they have the ability, it's the way he's wired us, it's the way he's made us, they have the ability to shape us. And in some cases, with our free will, with this God-given gift of free will, we have willingly chosen to follow the temptations of our hearts rather than God's best for our lives. And I want you to just follow closely in this introduction because I'm laying down a foundation for those things in which shape us. And of course, paramount to this list we're going to go through, at the very top of the list, number one at the list, is your heart. Your heart shapes you. We choose to do things outside of the will of God, listen to me, because humanity has a heart problem. This is why we choose outside of the will of God. This is why we at times struggle with saying no to temptations and urges and desires that we know aren't God's best for our life. It's why there's brokenness in the world. It's why there's brokenness in your life. It's why there's brokenness in my life and in our relationships. Every aspect of our life, there is brokenness and there's hurt and there's death. And it's all because of humanity's heart problem. That's why Jesus tells us in Matthew chapter 7, verse 21, that all sin begins where? It begins in the heart. All kinds of evil. The Bible says it begins in the heart. If you live with the notion that human beings just at a base level are just good people, you are so wrong. Human beings left alone, we self-destruct, we destroy. We don't just destroy ourselves, we destroy those around us. Why? Because we have a heart problem. And so there's this conflict inside of us. There's this conflict all the time inside of us. Our hearts are hurting, and as a result, our bodies want to do things opposite of God's will for our lives. Now, as I'm talking about this, I'm speaking first to those of you that are Christ followers, and the tension is there for you, certainly, and we'll talk about why. But those of you that have not made a faith reception, those of you that are uncertain that where you stand with God, part of your uncertainty is because your heart is made to give itself wholly and completely to God, and without forgiveness for your sin, and without you walking in step with Him and learning how to do that, you sense a void. You sense that all is not as it should be. And so we're all on this spectrum in this journey with God in a different way. But there is this conflict inside of us, inside of our hearts. It's why Paul says, the things I want to do, what? I don't do them. And the things that I don't want to do, oops, I did it again, right? Like, I just can't help myself. There's this constant tug and constant pull in my life. You know, growing up, I lived for a little while in Charlotte, North Carolina. And while I was in Charlotte, a basketball player by the name of Mike Jordan played for the UNC Tar Heels. It was while I lived there that Mike Jordan led them to a national championship. I love basketball. I played basketball growing up. It was my favorite sport. Basketball is my favorite sport. Oh, just kidding. Old school song there. I like the way they dribble up and down the court. Anybody? We're playing basket. Yeah. All right. I throw in songs every now and then because that's where my mind goes and it comes out. So basketball, I followed him, of course, to the Chicago Bulls, where he had just an unbelievable career. And no doubt about it, he's the greatest of all times. LeBron James fans, do not at me, okay? Okay? There's no argument. He's the GOAT. No doubt about it. But I so badly wanted to be like Mike that I thought if I bought the Jordans and wore the Jordans, if I stuck the tongue out, if I could, emulate his crossover, if I could get his fadeaway shot down, shoot at the absolute peak of that jumper, then I could be like Mike. But guess what? It didn't work. Because Mike didn't become Mike by trying to emulate and trying to get to a point where in a game he could play at a certain level. Michael Jordan became Michael Jordan because of a life's pursuit, mental and physical, that put him in a position and created an automatic response of being able to step up and shoot the shot. It was what you don't see that have made him the great. It's what you don't see on the court, what you didn't see on the court that actually allowed him to be able to knock down the jumper, dunk over people's heads. It was the disciplines. It was the things in the background. It was the disciplines he had for his mind, the discipline he had for his body. He worked harder than everyone, and it was all the pursuit. And so in regards to your walk with Jesus, just follow this analogy and follow this illustration. Those of us that are Christ followers in the room, of course, we want to be like Jesus, and we want to be able to live like Jesus and to do like Jesus. And after all, he did say, follow me. And so we study Jesus and we know of Jesus, and we see how Jesus lived. We read of the miracles, and we read the Beatitudes, and we hear about loving our neighbors and turning the other cheek and all of these great things. But yet so often in the crutch of the moment, we do not have the ability to shoot the shot. When I really have to love my enemy, something inside of me does not want to love my enemy. I want to punch my enemy. There's just something missing inside of me. And the same is true for you. But it's because just as if you looked at Michael Jordan and just thought, you know what, I'm just going to get his jumper down and I'm just going to try to shoot like him. But you did not have the spirit, the disciplines in the background, the mental disciplines, the physical disciplines, the day-to-day, the life pursuit. Then when it comes down to it, you're not going to be able to shoot the shot. It's why you can't walk away from the porn. It's why you want to. You're a new believer. You've been walking with God for 10 years maybe. It's why you can't walk away from the porn. It's why you can't stop doing unethical things in business, because no one else is going to know this little white lie. It's just between me and maybe a few business partners. But the big picture is I earn more, and that's got to be good for my family. We begin to justify. But the reason that you aren't able to follow Jesus in that moment is because you don't have the disciplines, and I don't have the disciplines. We've got to learn to have what the Bible calls as spiritual disciplines, and we'll talk about those. But so often we look at the miracles, and what we forget is we forget the amount of prayer that went in. We so often look at the crowds, but we forget the solitude. So often we look at Jesus and the ability he had to resist temptation, to be 100% God and 100% man. We look at the greatness of Jesus, but we so often forget that he fasted. I just mentioned just 3 spiritual disciplines: prayer, fasting, drawing away. You're exercising a spiritual discipline by being here today, by worshiping, by walking with Jesus. And so I want you to think about those things that shape you. I want you to consider your heart, because if I want to be like Jesus, I must allow Jesus to shape my heart. Okay? Again, simple but profound. Simple but very profound. If I want to be able to shoot the shot in the moment, If I want to be able, see, a lot of times, we guilt ourselves and live in condemnation when the reality is it's a pretty simple thing. If we will walk in Jesus, the power, the perspective, you will have the capacity. But without you and if I don't walk with Jesus on the daily, that when the fourth quarter's there and my family is depending on me to be able to step up and meet the moment, listen, my legs are going to be too tired. I'm going to be too exhausted, and I'm not going to have the power. I'm not going to have the capacity within to shoot the shot. And I want you to see that spiritually. I want you to begin to frame the things that you struggle with spiritually, the things that you struggle with in your life, the temptations that you just have a hard time saying no to. I want you to look at them differently. I want you to see them and understand that, no, you do have victory over them. You do have the power over them, but it does require you allowing God to shape your heart, to transform your heart. Because although you may be saved, in other words, a certainty of heaven and forgiveness for your sins, come on, your body is catching up with your salvation. Your mind needs to catch up. You have to be transformed. That's why the scripture says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And so often, again, we look at all that Jesus has done, but do you ever give Jesus the opportunity to daily shape your heart? You would say, yes, I've given him my heart, but do you give him the daily opportunity to actually shape your heart? And it's through these spiritual disciplines but that the shaping happens. But we got to understand how God has wired us and how he has made us. And central to it all, it is our heart. And it's not, again, I'm convinced of this. I've been in ministry for, I know I look a lot younger than I really am, but I've been in ministry for a good while. And I've had a lot of sit downs with a lot of people and wrestled with this in my own life. And by and large, it's not that people don't want to do what's right. They want to do what Jesus did. But listen, the old saying, what would Jesus do? It really should be, what did Jesus do? You see, when Jesus says, follow me, he's saying, do what I did. Okay, and not just the miracle. And not just the shoot down the shot moment. But follow me, do what I did. And if you'll do what I did, you'll be able to do what I did. Be able to do what I do. You'll be able to shoot that shot. You'll be able to step up to it. So our hearts are more than what pumps blood into our bodies. And just as your heart is central to your body, it's also central to your very essence. Simply put, again, the heart is central. It's central. The heart is who you are. You can't escape the centrality of the heart. God knows that. It's why he made it the central theme of the Bible. Just as he placed it, the physical heart, in the central part of the body. The subject of the heart is addressed more than any other subject in all the Bible. More than faith, more than worship, more than finances, more than following the golden rule, more than even worship. Like, the heart is the major topic. It is what is central to the Bible. And that's why in Matthew chapter 22, verse 37, Jesus said, you shall love the Lord your God with what? With all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. Soul and mind, is it all originates out of the heart. The directives of your mind comes out of the heart. Intention comes out of the heart. Matthew 6:21, we looked at this a few weeks ago. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Proverbs 21:2, every way is right to a man in his own eyes, but the Lord, what is the Lord weigh? The Lord weighs the heart, because the heart is central, and the heart can be a lot of things. The Bible tells us the heart can be troubled, the heart can be wounded, the heart can be pierced, the heart can be grieved, the heart can even be broken. My heart is broken right now for my friend's family. On the other hand, the heart can also be cheerful. The heart can be full of joy. The heart can be full of rejoicing. It can be glad. The heart can be whole. The heart can be divided. The heart can be complete. The heart can be fragmented. I just want you to think about it. I want you to think how many times you said, part of me wants to, but part of me doesn't. I'm kind of halfway in and halfway out. Yeah, I kind of want to go, but I kind of don't. Y'all ever like that? Someone invites you to go do something like, part of me wants to go, but part of me wants to stay home in my pajamas, right? All the introverts. So the Bible tells us the heart can be all these things, but also says it's the generator of our courage. It's the generator of our creativity. It's the generator of our conviction. It is what holds us strong. It is what helps us stand on the rock of Jesus if we are Christ followers. It's the source of our hope. It's the source of our faith. And it's, of course, the source of our love. And according to Proverbs 4:23, it's the wellspring of life, okay? So think about the things that you love the most. Think about it. What do you love the most? Don't give me the Jesus answer. Just what do you love the most? What is it? Is it fishing? Is it basketball? Is it, I don't know what it is. But what is it? But isn't it true that the things that you love the most, what you live for? In other words, you arrange your day and arrange your finances and arrange your life around what you love. Why? Because it's the way that God has made us. Because what? The heart is central. Jesus was once confronted by a guy and point blank asked him, what's the most important thing in life? And what did Jesus reply and say to him? He said, love the Lord your God, what? With all your heart. So God has always said, and he says to you, and he says to me, that the heart is central. And you know, when Addison was born, my wife and I, we had no idea that something was wrong. She was tiny, she was 4.5 pounds, but we were in love, you know, at first sight. Just this beautiful, beautiful little tiny girl, but we had no idea what was going on the inside until one of the nurses discovered the heart murmur, which led her to see a pediatric cardiologist, which led us to realize and understand that she was born with this heart defect. But it took the nurse to notice. You see, it was the symptoms of her heart that indicated, that set off, that helped us discover and understand that there's a problem here. There's something wrong here. Something's not right. So what about your life? And what about your heart? And I'm not just talking about your salvation. That's paramount. That's on top. I'm talking to those of you that are also Christ followers that have a certainty of salvation. But how is your heart? When was the last time you listened to your heart? What is your heart telling you? If the heart is central, isn't it important that we should understand what our heart is saying to us? If out of our heart is the wellspring of life, shouldn't we have a constant pulse and understanding of what's going on in our lives? So that means if you have a lack of passion, if you have this subtle low grade, you know how people have a low grade temperature, you just have a subtle low grade of constant disappointment and hurt, and maybe it manifests itself into anxiety or depression, or just a really negative outlook in life, or maybe just very practically, your marriage isn't hitting all cylinders, or you're not in the place that you thought you would be at this stage in life. Like, again, how did I get here? If you look at all those things and you have this sense that not all is right there, hey, listen, symptoms. You got some symptoms. Your heart's trying to tell you something. Your heart's trying to let you know, hey, there is a problem. Because Jesus said, I've come to give you life and life abundantly. But the sad thing is for most Christians, the only abundant thing in our life is how often we say, Jesus, I promise I won't do it again. I mean, let's just be real. And it's opposite of the life. And so all of a sudden, walking in the ways of Jesus, they seem laborsome to us. Our lives in our walk with Jesus, they're not filled with joy, when joy is what Jesus came to give us and brings us. And they're not life full of abundance. And sometimes a life of lack and life of burden, and Christianity all of a sudden is just like, it becomes heavy. And if that is the form of Christianity that you're trying to live in, that is not the form, that is not what God intended you and the life that he intended you to live, your heart is trying to tell you something. There's symptoms here, and you got to understand that more than likely, every single one of us, we have one of two heart conditions. I'm going to talk about them real quick. We all probably one of two heart conditions. The first one is that we may have a heart of stone. The Bible describes those whose hearts are not turned towards God, or those whose hearts are hardened to the things of God. The Bible would describe that heart to be a heart of stone. It's how God would describe your heart if you've not given ownership to your heart, if you've not allowed him to rescue, to do the necessary heart surgery, okay? Ezekiel chapter 11, look at this in verse 19. It says, and I will give them, this is God speaking, one heart. That's important. One, singular. I'll give them one heart and a new spirit, and I will put within them, I will remove the heart of stone from their flesh, and I will give them a heart of flesh. So we see the heart that doesn't belong to God is as a heart of stone. And this heart disease is congenital. It's born with it, just like Addison was born with her heart defect. She didn't do something that caused the heart defect. You know, she didn't, like in the womb, have some hard living and do some bad things in the womb that caused her to have a heart defect. You know what I'm saying? The sin in your life, your heart problem, a heart of stone, it is congenital. You're born with it. You're born with it because of Adam and Eve. You guys know the story of Adam and Eve and how God first placed them in paradise and allowed them and gave them charge of the whole earth. Just populate it, which sounds like a lot of fun, by the way. Populate the planet. Married people, come on, that's funny. Populate the planet and then have dominion over all creation. You know, it sounds like walk around naked and enjoy everything in life, and it sounds amazing, right? But sin entered the picture because in free will, Adam and Eve, they chose in a moment to step away from God's best. They chose for a moment. God said, listen, anything on this planet, anything you can have, but don't touch the garden, or don't touch the tree of life. Don't touch that. But in their free will, they rejected God's best. They bought into what the serpent, the devil, was selling them. And from that moment, sin's into the picture. Paul puts it this way in the book of Romans. Again, what are we talking about? We're talking about our heart. We're talking about our heart, the condition of our heart. It's the condition that you're born with, I'm born with, every single one of us, unless we allow God to do the necessary heart surgery. Romans chapter 5, verse 12. Therefore, just as sin came into the world through one man, who's that one man? That one man is Adam, okay? And death through sin, because when they sinned, God warned them, if you do this, you will die. And they did die. So that means death was not in the picture in the beginning. So then it goes on, it says, so death spread to all men because all sinned. So that's what our life looks like. Sin into the picture, and it spread like a virus. It spread so rapidly, so quickly. And now every person that's born on this planet is born with a heart disease. And how does God feel about this? How does our Creator, the one who loves us and made us, how does he feel about it? Well, we find in chapter 6 of Genesis just exactly how he feels about it. It says, the Lord saw that the wickedness of a man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Isn't that interesting? The thoughts of the heart. And then in verse 6, and the Lord regretted that he made man on the earth. And it grieved him to what? To his heart. You see, today, if your heart is a heart of stone, it grieves your heavenly Father. It grieves your Creator, because you were made for so much more. And today, he wants to give you a heart of flesh, but you have a sin issue. You need surgery. I need surgery. I got the surgery when I was 16 years old. I brought my sin problem, my heart problem to Jesus, and he took my heart of stone, and he forgave me for my sins, and not just the sins that I had committed, but the sins that I would commit. All of them, all at once. He forgave all of them, and he gave me a heart of flesh and not of stone. He gave me one heart, and that has been the most transformative moment of my life and continues to be why my life is in a process of transformation. My body, my mind, like yours, my flesh, if you will, my desires, my appetites are all still being conformed. So my physical nature is trying to catch up to the Jesus in me. My appetites and desires. But there's great hope, because even though sin came in and messed up our hearts and gave us a heart of stone, Paul goes on in Romans 5 and says this, for as by one man's disobedience, again, that's Adam, the many were made sinners, so by one man's obedience, that's Jesus, the many will be made what? Will be made righteous, will be forgiven, will be made whole and pure in the sight of God. Now some of you as Christ followers, you're like, Pace, I've made that transaction, but I'm still on the struggle bus. Come on, like I still really struggle, and I would not describe my walk with Jesus as a life of abundance. I think I still say yes to sin more than I say no to sin. I really, really am continuing to struggle. Or you go, man, I'm just kind of just there with God. I don't know, like of course I believe him, but I just don't have the passion I used to have. And so we are on this mad cycle of this up and down. And the reason that if you thought about it, if you slowed down enough, those of you that are Christ followers, if you feel that way, the reason you feel that way, because the Spirit of God inside of you is saying, there's more. There's more. Galatians chapter 5 says, for freedom Christ has set us free. It's for freedom. So maybe those of you that are Christ followers, you don't have a heart of stone. You've been given a heart of flesh. But your challenge is now you've stopped allowing Jesus to transform and shape your heart. You got your fire insurance, if you will. You know you're going to heaven. You've got forgiveness of your sin, but now you have settled, and now you're allowing your life to be enslaved to something that you're actually free from. I mean, like you're literally like that guy on the old movie. What was the old show where the drunk would come in and put himself in jail? Andy Griffith, you know what I'm saying? He would come in and he put himself into jail and put himself to bed and just you're living in your own prison. When all the while you've got the control because of Jesus to walk out. So the other condition that you may have, and I'm going to wrap with this, is that maybe you have a fragmented heart. You've got a fragmented heart. Again, Ezekiel chapter 11, verse 19, it says, and I will give you what? I'll give you one heart. And a new spirit I will put within them. You see, when you gave your heart to Jesus, he gave you an undivided heart. Your heart used to be fragmented. Your heart used to be divided, but with a heart of flesh comes one heart. And our problem comes in when we try to fragment or compartmentalize our hearts, our new hearts, because our new hearts that Jesus has given us, the new hearts that make us alive spiritually, they don't operate properly if they're divided. So here's the way most of us try to live our lives. I've got this Play-Doh up here. And so we would say, oh man, I've got my spiritual life, right? It's my spiritual life. Make that white. And then, I've got, and we'll probably have a lot of different colors over here. I'm just going to hit 5. I've got my social life, right? Got my social life. And then, blue's gonna represent my private life. And yellow is gonna be my work life. And then red is gonna be my family life, my relational life. If you're single and ready to mingle, what I'm saying, all that. Like, it's my relational life. It's red, okay? So the challenge comes when we think that this is what our heart looks like, individual parts. That I've got my spiritual life, I've got my social life, I've got my relational life, I've got my private life. No one else knows, just me, and no one else, just me. What I do doesn't affect what I do. But that's not the truth, because when you become a Christ follower, everything is spiritual. And everything affects everything. It all becomes one. Jesus came to save and redeem all of you, not just the spiritual you. So I want you to think about this. If I think that when I'm in my social life, I can go, where's my social life? My social life was red. Okay, I'm going to take a little bit of my social life. And Jesus, you take a time out. Family, Dad, I know you raised me one way or whatever. You sit right over there. Work life, hey, I know I got to get up early. But it's girls' night. Come on, somebody. And we just, if you think you can separate it, no. It's all together. Because it's now all spiritual. Yeah. So when we say, bring Jesus into the family, bring Jesus into the boardroom, it actually shows us that we've got the wrong perspective. Because it's all spiritual. And now the question is practically speaking, am I allowing Jesus to shape the totality of me, to get down into the details of my life? If he saved all of me, doesn't he deserve to have lordship of all of me? Doesn't he deserve, shouldn't he be at the center of it all? Shouldn't he be the one who says, this is how you raise your family, and this is how you order your finances, and this is how you do your relational world, and this is what your sex life should be like, and this is all of it. It's all of it. You can't piece it out. The piece it out, the piece goes out. And we fool ourselves, we kid ourselves to thinking that I can do something privately and it not impact my spiritual life. And so today, Jesus wants to do heart surgery for some. He wants to give some a heart of flesh. You came with a heart of stone. You're watching online, and right now you don't know where you stand with God. Maybe you're at one point we're walking with God, but now you're struggling. You don't know where you stand, or maybe you just have always pushed God apart, but now you're going, it makes sense. All of it, I thought it was separate, but it's together. And maybe you've never really trusted God with all your heart. And you just said, God, all of it, family life, business life, private life, relational life, social life. Because you know that the heart directs all of those areas of your life. So if you want God to impact your business life, what do you got to do? Give him your heart. Let him shape your heart. If you want your relational life to be in step with his will for your life, what do you got to do? Just give him your heart. Just give him your heart. It's all connected. It's all connected. And then there's others of you needed a reminder today that it's all one. Those of us that are Christ followers, this is us. This is you. Okay? You got to remind yourself you're forgiven. You're free. There's therefore no condemnation. And now what we're going to learn in this series and in the coming weeks is, okay, what does it look like now? What's it look like to allow God to shape my life? That's the Christian life, by the way. It's why we pray. It's why we do small groups. It's why we worship, because it's transforming us. Don't you see it? It's transforming us. It's making us, because the heart is the center of it all.